Welcome to Make Something with me, David Picciuto, and today we're going to talk about setting up the bandsaw, plus a few of my favorite tricks, and we're going to give this guy some style. Check it. I only use 2 blades on my bandsaw. 95% of the time, I'm using a 3/16 of an inch 4 TPI skip tooth blade. TPI stands for teeth per inch, and 4 teeth per inch works perfect for what I do. And I find that anything less than 3/16 of an inch doesn't track well on the bandsaw. The other 5%, I'm using a 1/2 inch wood slicer resaw blade, also from Highland Woodworking. And I only use this when I'm resawing really tall pieces. If I'm resawing short pieces, I'll just stick with this. And that's why I use this blade 95% of the time. Most bandsaw problems come from the blade. Either having the wrong blade or having a dull blade. And I would say most of the time, it's having a dull blade. Now, if you're lucky enough to have a bandsaw with this quick release lever, this makes life a lot easier. My tension gauge on the back of my bandsaw does not work, so I completely ignore it. I'll show you how I tension the blade here in a second. What I like to do is spin the wheel and turn the knob on the back here until my blade is centered. And I don't want the blade centered, I want the gullet, that's the deepest part of the blade, centered on the tire. If you know for sure that your blade is on there, nice and secure, and it's centered, turn it on real quick, and then turn it off, and see if the blade moves. I like to set my guide to just behind the gullet. Then these 2 bearings here, I'm going to turn the wheel with my hand, and I want it just so it kisses and then back off just a hair. I'm going to do the same with the other one. And then the last is this thrust bearing here. I don't want it touching. As you can see, it's touching and spinning there. I'm going to back off just a little bit. And that should spin when I put pressure on the blade, but if I'm just turning the wheel, it shouldn't be touching. So I'm going to back off just a hair. Now we do the same exact thing for the guides below the table. It's going to be a little hard to get a camera in there, so you're just going to have to trust me that I'm doing the exact same thing. A lot of people make a huge fuss about blade tension. I don't. I use the same tension for nearly all of my blades, but if you do want to check the tension, the guides on the bandsaws pretty much suck. So I have a little pencil line on my square here, and it's set back 1/4 of an inch. So if I set my square on here, I should be able to deflect my blade 1/4 of an inch without too much pressure. And I can see I'm just a little bit tight. That's not that big of a deal. So I'm just going to loosen this knob up top here. There we go, that's better. And that's all you really need for blade saw tension. Don't worry about it too much. I like to set the height of my guide to just above the workpiece. Anything too high and you have exposed blade, which can be unsafe. And then plus the blade doesn't have anything to register up against. So keep everything to just above the piece. So now we're going to square this up. And there's a couple knobs underneath my table here that I can make that adjustment. It looks pretty square on both sides. Cut into a piece of wood, stop it. And if these 2 sides are parallel, you should be able to flip it over and it should fit right into that curve. And we are dead on balls accurate.
Dead on balls accurate.
It's an industry term.
This is one of the templates from my bandsaw box book, and I've had some people say they have a hard time making this corner radius right here. So I'm going to show you what it takes to cut small curves. When applying templates to my blanks here, I use the spray adhesive and I use the light stuff so you can get this off. This is the 100 light Loctite spray adhesive. When making these tight turns right here, it's kind of hard to explain, but it's like an equilibrium of pushing the wood and turning the wood at the same time. You can't just stop and then try to turn it because you're gonna twist the blade. It's kind of like driving a stick shift where you have the equilibrium of the clutch and the accelerator and the gear shift. It's that you'll get a feeling for it after you do it a couple times. Let the blade do the work. Don't push it too fast, otherwise you're gonna have a hard time following your line. Like I said before, most of your problems are probably either a dull blade or having too many teeth per inch. And see, I got a little burning here. That means my blade's probably getting a little dull. And so a nice sharp blade will help you cut those corners there. When cutting thick pieces of wood, you want less teeth per inch because it needs to be able to remove that waste. Otherwise, all that sawdust is gonna get clogged in there and it's gonna cause it to burn and it's gonna drift outside the line. So, it looks like I need a new blade. I'm just gonna draw a silly shape here. And we wanna remove this part of the wood. One of the ways to make this cut easier is to make some relief cuts, which will relieve some of the pressure on the blade and not cause so much twisting. So let's go make some relief cuts and then go cut this out. All right, now we're gonna go make the cut, and then these little pieces will fall off, making the cut a lot easier. You can get some really tight radiuses with that. When you're cutting really small pieces, you might find that it wants to fall in this little trap right here. So what you can do is just take a piece of scrap wood, clamp that down. Now we can cut tiny pieces without worrying that it's gonna fall in there. Not only does that work great for small pieces, but then that gives the blade some support right above your cut, and it gives you a zero clearance insert, just like on the table saw. So now I'm throwing in my 1/2-inch wood slicer Resaw blade, and installing this is the exact same technique as before, so we're not gonna go over that again. We're gonna take this big piece of cherry here, and I wanna cut a thin veneer. So I'm just going to draw a line. I have this little gadget here from MagSwitch. It's got a couple of magnets on there. When I throw it on the table and turn these knobs, it's nice and secure. It's got these little bearings on here that we can use to guide our piece through here. So I'm just going to use my line here, kind of set the position, because there's only one point of contact on this fence, and that's these little bearings here. This will make up for any drift. So that allows you to turn your wood and follow the line as you push it through the blade. Let the blade do the work. Don't push too fast. Let the blade do the work. Let the gullet remove the waste. If you push too fast, it's going to want to drift and you're going to get some flex. One of the reasons why you want a thicker blade for doing big resaw jobs like this is because the thicker blade will flex a lot less. It's okay to turn this while it's going through and pivot it along those bearings. For the end here, I'm gonna pull it through on the other side just to keep my hands away from that huge blade. And that came out perfect. And it should, that's a brand new blade. I'm gonna do the same thing again, but I'm not going to use that resaw fence. I'm just gonna draw a line and then I'm gonna cut it out and follow it freehand. Just to show you that you don't need those gadgets. They make life easier, but it's not necessary. So to keep my hands away from the blade, I have these micro jig gripper blocks. This is not sponsored. I just like using these guys. The little paddles that you get with your joiner also work great. What I like about these guys is it has these little things that catch on the wood and help you push it through. And it's got a nice, real grippy surface here for getting a hold of your wood. Also, it's got two flat bottoms, which hold your piece vertically. So whether you use these or the pads from your joiner or whatever, you want to use something to keep your hands away from the blade to guide that through. We have these two pieces of veneers now. There's a nice smooth side and then the rougher side made by the bandsaw blade. I'm going to show you how to smooth that out over on the planer. With this guy, it's got two rough sides. If you own a joiner, you can run this through the joiner, flatten it out, and make more pieces. Because this is so thin, you might not want to run this through the planer. So we're just going to make a sled out of some plywood. Unfortunately, all I have is really nice walnut plywood. Boo-hoo, right? So you work with what you got. So I'm just going to use this piece of walnut plywood, and I have this sandpaper with the adhesive back. You could also use sandpaper and spray adhesive. And I'm just going to throw that on there, and that's got some good grip, and we'll run this through the planer, and we can make this as thin as we want it. There we go. Look how thin that is. Perfect. You can use that for veneer. So this is the fence that came with my bandsaw here. And a lot of times I'm using this fence to cut small pieces to make them nice and straight. And I get called out a lot because I have all this open blade here, but I can't help it because this fence is so tall that I can't lower that anymore on the small pieces. It's just kind of the disadvantage to this fence. If I move it out this way, then I can come down much further. But for the small pieces, the bearing or the guides here hit it, nothing I can do. Except always know where the blade is, always know where your fingers are, and be safe. I get asked all the time, what's the first big woodworking tool I should purchase? And for some, it's going to be the table saw, and for some, it's going to be the bandsaw. There's a lot of things you can do on the bandsaw. You can do a lot of rip cuts and cross cuts on the bandsaw, but you're going to get a much cleaner cut on the table saw. If I could only have one big tool in the shop, I would go with the bandsaw. Older bandsaws have little knobs on here that you can turn instead of using the little Allen key. I've thought about, and I haven't done it yet, and I was thinking about doing it for this video, but we got real lazy. Is to take a little Allen wrench, and then cut it off, like about right there, and then make a little wooden knob. You could probably use a dowel, drill a little hole in there, epoxy that in, and then maybe hot glue that into there, and then you have these permanent knobs on there, and you don't have to use the Allen key. I don't know, just a thought. Has anybody done anything like that? If so, let me know in the comments down below. I'm not an expert at the bandsaw. This is just the things that I've gathered throughout the years. I do have a book on making bandsaw boxes with the bandsaw. I'll have a link to this down below. There's a couple other resources that you might want to check out. Jimmy DiResta has an amazing bandsaw tips and tricks video. And then there's the classic video, it's like 8 years old now, the Alex Snodgrass demonstration where he goes over setting up a bandsaw. I'll have links to both of those videos down below. I highly suggest you check them out. I'd like to thank my top Patreon peeps this week, and that's Jonathan J. Katz Moses, Jason Hughes, Georgeann Reeve, Carl Brink, Glen Rossiter, Adam Beckwith, Bill Diehl, Brian McKnight, Chad Forrester, and Timothy Allen. If you want to support me and my show, visit patreon.com/Picciuto. I'm having a meetup Saturday, June 3rd from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. at Kencraft Company here in Toledo, Ohio. There's going to be door prizes, and I'm going to have books with me. We can do some signed books, and there's going to be some demonstrations. So if you're in the area, come say hello. If you're not familiar with Kencraft, they're my local hardwood dealer. It's a family-owned business. It's where I get all my wood for all my projects. So if you can make it, I'd love to hang out with you. That's Saturday, June 3rd from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. I'd like to thank my buddy Matt Taylor for painting my bandsaw. If you want to check him out, I have some links down below. He's one of my favorite artists, and he's located here in Toledo, Ohio. I want to paint all my tools in the shop. Every tool I want to be a canvas in a different color, maybe by a different artist, and you know, just to have a fun, unique shop. Thank you, Matt. You did an awesome job. I love it. I love it. I love it. All right, folks, that is it. As always, be safe, have fun, stay passionate, and make something.